Hey guys, welcome back to another Geometry Dash tutorial. Today, as a celebration for 100th video, we are going to do how to learn every single trigger in the game. Alright, so keep in mind that I will not discuss every triggers by order. These are all the triggers that we have. I'm not going to be showing in-depth explanation. I don't know 100% of it yet, but for a fact that I know how to use all of them for after a year. So triggers are basically functionalities to your level. And every time when you access a trigger, you go to Edit Object to configure it. Alright, now, if you're in classic mode, which is this, technically the trigger will activate. You see this line over here? When a player goes through that line, or through this position, this trigger will activate. If you're in platformer mode, it will not. The player cannot go through that line. It's gonna activate it by time, like this. So keep that in mind. And almost every trigger has these two checkboxes: touch trigger and spawn trigger. We will discuss the spawn trigger later. Touch trigger. So what the touch trigger does, it forms this hitbox around. So it will not activate unless if this player touches the trigger. In platformer mode, touch trigger is very crucial in platformer mode if you wanted to have it activated like that. But just however, this trigger can only be activated once. With the multi-trigger, you can make this thing activated a bunch of times if you want. Anyways. Hold on a second, I gotta open it up something. Okay. Alright, let's go ahead and cover some trigger basics. So, the first trigger that we're going to be discussing is a COL trigger. This is also known as the color trigger. This over here, I'm not going to explain to you almost everything. As you can see, we use color channels. And this uses a block. So Edit Object will be like this. And in each color channel is going to be linked up to this block here. So this changes the attributes of a color channel. So you can change the color ID that's going to match whatever color this is. But if you want to activate like the background, the color of the background or something like that, you can do so. And as you can see, the background is white. So we can change this with this color wheel, like pink. It changes to pink. Now fade time is going to, in seconds, is going to fade until that color. So if I say 0, it's going to be immediately. Also, there's a duration line right here. It won't be colored. I have the game modded, so yeah. But it's going to tell us how many seconds you're going to be at. You can configure this in duration lines and effect lines as well. Let's see here. Player color 1. So this will match your own player's color. Blending is not really ideal for the background, but it will blend the colors together. And copy color is going to inherit from another channel with hue, saturation, and brightness. Now, anything on the information here will provide you more detail. So yeah. So again, the color trigger changes the color trigger's attributes. So if you know how this color channels and everything work, this should be easy for you. But I did give you an explanation, so there you have it. The next thing that I'm going to be doing is the pulse trigger. Now the pulse trigger is basically like the color trigger, but like a little bit more advanced. You can make the So this, again, channel ID. We're going to talk about groups after this. Again, the background. So change your color. And then it's not going to do anything. Okay. You see, it's similar to the color channel with fade in. But here's the thing. If it fades completely, it's going to go back to the original screen. So hold is going to hold on to it. So it's going to fade in for 1 second, then it's going to hold this for 1 second. And you can fade it out. Just like so. And if you want to make a flashing effect, you can leave the fade in and hold to 0 and have the fade in to like this. You can make like a flash effect. Just like that. Anyways, now we're going to talk about groups. So, groups are like linking of one object to another. Okay, so let me bring the pulse trigger up real quick. So, to create a group, you're going to go to edit group and select whatever group you want, but one is if you're a beginner, one is a good option. Next free is always going to select another unused group ID, and you click on add. You can add multiple groups if you like. Selecting these will remove it, and now this will be on group ID 1. So we're going to switch to group ID and change that to 1. We're going to make this red, pulse it, and as you can see, this block is now red. So that's how you link whatever objects you want for this trigger to take effect. Pretty cool. Alright, now let's do the alpha trigger. Now the alpha trigger changes the opacity of the any objects. So I have this whole thing, and you can select multiple if you'd like. There's the alpha trigger. So fade time, same thing as usual. Opacity. So essentially what we're doing is making this block invisible. Now it's invisible. It fades, it makes it invisible. If you don't know what opacity is, that's basically what it is. It makes it transparent. So if I have it like this, you see how it's half visible? The reason why it's called alpha is because we have something called RGBA, which means red, green, blue, alpha. Alpha part is changing the opacity. And the next one that we got is the toggle trigger. So toggle trigger basically toggles objects on and off. So it's usually toggled on all the time, but when it's toggled off, then basically this object will be invisible, but this time you won't be able to interact with it. Add this to a group, and we're going to toggle here. And if we just select a group ID and nothing, it will toggle off. To toggle on, tick on activate group. And as you can see, this triggered color changes. So if it's, as you can see, sorry about that. Oops. As you can see, if it's off, I can't do anything. Alright, now let's do some transformation triggers. So these triggers will be moving the blocks, rotating, and so on. So we have finally completed the basics. Now we're going to do the transformations. So let's start with the move trigger. And I've basically showed you this before. Now this will be most likely very complex, but don't worry, I will provide you this step by step. Now, we're going to pick this to a group, and I'm going to always have this on touch triggered, so that way you'll see it more clearly. And target group, or target group ID. And we have move X and move Y. So move X is going to be, where this object is going to be moving. So the move trigger basically moves an object or a block to a different position. If you don't know what X or Y means, X basically means horizontal, as you can see my mouse, and Y is vertical. So if you want to have move X to 10, it's going to move right. If it's negative 10, it's going to move left. With move Y to 10, going to move up, and if it's -10, it's going to move down. So, as you can see, it moves right. And the more higher values, it will move further. Now, move time will be very similar to the color trigger. It's 0.5 seconds, and it's not fading to the color. The move time is going to be the amount of time it will finish that state. So, as you can see, it moved from this to this in 0.5 seconds. If you leave it at 0, it will move immediately. The higher it is, the slower it gets. Now, easing are whatever like thing to move this side. So if it's easing out, it's like this. So it has that nice transition. If I have it like bounce, it has the bounce effect. And if I did back, as you can see, it did that. And yeah, that's all we have. I have a mod that this plus will show you all of your easings. And that's all the basics of the move trigger. But now let's review. Now let's give you something a little bit more advanced. So lock X and lock Y. So we can lock this thing to the player. If we lock from the X position, as you can see, it will do that for 0.5 seconds. But here's the thing: if you do -1, it's gonna do it infinitely, but it's not gonna do on like all the triggers, just the move trigger. So just set this as 99999 if you could. As you can see, the object follows the player, and on a Y position, it will also do the same thing. I guess it basically copies the Y movement. Yeah, so as you can see, object follows the player. Now you can do the same thing to the camera if you'd like. Modifier allows you to change the speed, so it does have some modifiers to it. So if you select it to 0.5, obviously the block is going to move like half speed. Alright, now let's go over through target mode and direction mode. So next we got here is target mode. Now I'm not going to explain to you all of this. The target mode is supposed to use another group. So let's do that. So this object is going to move to this object. Nowhere where I'm going to add, it will always move to this object. So that's what target mode does. So target position group ID is going to be the object this object here. The object that you want to move will be in here again, but this is where you want the object to move to. You can do player 1 if you want to move to the player. P1 is usually the normal player. P2 is for dual gameplay. And if you want to have it only on the X or the Y side, you can also do that as well. So let me go and give you a explanation here. You see how it moved to this side? So if I want to do it on the X side, as you can see, it only moves on the X position or the Y position. Now direction mode will only moves the group in the direction. So if I have it like 23 distance, it's only gonna move like this version. So it's gonna move like halfway. Dynamic mode is gonna update the locations in real time. So I'm doing target mode for this one. So as you can see, well, it won't work. So I think if I add this to a player, it's going to work really well. So as you can see, it will always going to follow to the player, no matter what. And dynamic mode, so it updates the locations in real time. Small step is going to make the move X and move Y slider slower. So if you move it at 10, and as you can see I did show you, but it's gonna move a little bit with a small step. That's basically good for if you want to have a falling effect for the block, like it moves like this a little bit, which is very, very crucial. And yeah. Okay, next one is the rotate trigger. So the rotate trigger rotates objects, not moves objects, rotates objects. Now, again, it looks very hard to do, but don't worry, I'll explain to you almost all of this. I'm going to add this spike that will rotate, and we're going to put the target group here. And we got degrees, so we can input the degrees you'd like, and x360. So x360 is going to make full revolutions around. So if I did 1, that spike is going to make a full turn, like that. But if you want to enter a specific degrees, if you want this to only turn 90 degrees, go to input that. Move time and easing is the same thing as the move trigger, and I'll explain to you what a center group ID is. So if you have your own center, this object uses their own center to rotate. This block over here is going to be another group, and if you want this to rotate around the block, then use this for the center ID, so it's in the center, which makes a little bit more sense. And now, as you can see, it now rotates around. Locked object rotation will have the objects rotate around, but it will not rotate the spike. So as you can see, it did something like this. Okay, without the lock object rotation, it's gonna rotate it. It's gonna rotate it like this instead of like this. Aim mode will have the object aiming at someone. Why is it doing full rotations? Okay. So if you want, so it will have a object to aim or look at this object. So rotation target ID is going to be this group. Or if you want to assign it to a player, you can do that, which I'm going to be doing. If you want to add an offset, you can do that here as well. So, as you can see, that thing just was looking at me. So, I mean, technically it didn't continue constantly looking at me. That's where the dynamic mode is. It's the same thing as the move trigger. So, we click on infinite, and we can add whatever easing we'd like. So, now this spike is aiming at me. Like it's getting ready to shoot at me. Easing will make it more like smooth, like this. Now, a second page is only for A mode, min X ID, max X ID, min Y ID, max Y ID. I won't be showing you an example of this, but these are group IDs that will be, it's only to like limit how a spike can move further from another object or a player. So yeah. And next we got is follow mode. So follow mode, what it does is sorry about that. I don't know why it's not working. Yep. It basically copies the rotation of an object or the player. So if you want to have this spike to behave like to be like the player, you can basically do that with lock the player X and Y on the move trigger, and you can basically use the follow mode for the rotate trigger. Alright, next one that we have is the follow trigger. Follow trigger basically copies the movements for the move trigger. So, I'm going to use this move trigger. We're going to move it up to 25. Again, see, it moves further. Now, with follow trigger, we're going to add another group to this. Now, the follow trigger. So, target group ID is going to be the object right here. And the follow group ID is going to be the same ID that you want that object to move, will move. So what it does is, see how the actual move trigger this side, this. So if you put it together, it'll work. So this basically copies the movement, and we have X modifier and Y modifier. So if you put it at 0.5, as you can see, this will move halfway. If you put it to 0.25, it will move it 4 times slower. Now this is exactly how the modifier, if you're confused with this is exactly how it works. Same with the direct dynamic mode that I explained to you in the rotate trigger. Alright, next one we got is follow player Y trigger. Now this trigger copies the player's Y. This makes the object copy the player's Y movements. It is essentially better than the lock to player Y, because if you teleport and you have this, the object will not teleport with you, but this will do. So this is pretty good. So we take an object, have this move time whatever we like. Again, I put 9999. I don't know for me, but when I put 9999, it lowers my FPS. I'm sorry, my PC's 5 years old. I linked it to that object, and as you can see, it copies the Y position. And you can adjust some more modifiers as it too. And I'll explain to you speed, delay, and offset. I don't know really what max offset does, but this is its explanation here. So, next one, so speed, you can make it like a little bit lower, I'm assuming, like 0.084. You can see how it's a little bit more weak now, like I can jump this off. So that's what this is. Delay, as its name suggests, delay will add a delay to it. So if it's at 1 second, if I activate the trigger, it's going to wait 1 second and it's going to perform its action. Offset, basically all it does is that it changes the Y position. So yeah, follow trigger and follow player Y trigger is pretty fast to do. That's because there are less explanation. It has a bunch of less stuff. Alright, next one that we have is the scale trigger. Now, we taught you move trigger. I taught you move trigger and the rotate trigger. Guess what the scale trigger does? If you say scales objects, changes the size of an object, then you're correct. Now, so in the edit side, we can change the scale like this, but we have something called scale X and scale Y. Now, scale X allows you to squish and stretch the objects like this, and scale Y looks like this. Now, just like the rotate trigger, it has their own center. So, this is the center, and this is how it scales, like this. If you have an object here as a center group ID, like this, it's going to scale pretty much like this. If you have it on this, it's going to do it like this. So that's exactly how the scale trigger is, and it is pretty easy if you know how to use the rotate trigger. Duration easing is the same thing. So this basically changes the scale. I just have to add used to it. There you go. Now, divided by value x and y. So these checkboxes will changes the sizes down. Like so. So if you input this at like 3, you don't know how to like set this as 0.5 or whatever. So this checkbox will save you. Relative scale rotation, I will not explain to you what it does. Relative rotation kind of makes the x and y axis to change the sizes as well, as you can see here. Only move makes the objects move as if they were scaled. We're not going to do that. I'm only going to be covering like some basics for you guys. So that is the scale trigger. And well, this is going to be a pretty long one. Keyframes. So keyframe trigger makes very complex animations. So it's basically the moving, the rotating, and scaling. So it makes some pretty complex movements. And we use this tool right here, which brings up this. Limp has a lot of stuff. And I'm only going to explain you some basics to it. So, with this keyframe tool, to add another keyframe, click on copy and paste, and that will duplicate another one. And as you can see, I'm on PC, so I can use keyboard shortcuts with this. So you can add as much as keyframes as you want. And this block here is going to move like this. And you can't really do that with the other move triggers. Now to make it really rotate around, we can use cubic interpolation. See, if I moved one keyframe, see how it's like this line or whatever? We can do that with curve over here. Okay. Select all over here will select all the keyframes. And curve will do this. Okay, so if you want to, so reverse order will reverse the whole keyframe. So this is the first keyframe, this is the last one, but it'll be the opposite if you do reverse order. Duration is going to take from this keyframe to the other keyframe. X360 is going to make some full revolutions to this one, and CCW means clockwise and counterclockwise. So if you want to fully force the rotation, you can do that. Closed loop is going to be only on the last one, and that's going to connect the first one to make like a loop around it. Dup anim means duplicate animation. So if you select all of it, copy and paste it, it's going to link to another, it's going to continue linking it. So this will duplicate the animation without even needing to copy and paste. Ref only, we're going to explain that in just a second. And line opacity, if you don't want to have, as you can see the lines here, if you don't want to have the lines, you can totally do that. Now to make the keyframes work, we're going to select all of these keyframes to a group and have an object that you want to have, the object you want to move or whatever, add this to another group. Now, here's the first page, here's the second page. Now the second page is just modifiers. So you can mess with this if you want. So, target ID is going to be the object that you want to have the keyframes to have effect. Select this block. it's at 2 on the group ID, give it the same name, the same number. Animation group ID is the group for the keyframes. And that's it. As you can see, the block moves with the keyframes. Now, look at this. Now, since blocks can't rotate, I can have to do that. You can rotate, and you can change the size of the keyframes. Watch this. As you can see, the object rotates and scales with it. Now, if you select all of them to like ref only all the keyframes except for the first and the last one, it will be used as a reference. So if you have this to ease in out, it's supposed to be going from this keyframe to the other, but it can do that all the way until the first one. So that is the keyframes. Alright, next one is the advanced follow trigger. Now this one is the hardest trigger out of all of them in the game, so I'm not going to explain to you everything into detail. It's supposed to have an object move to the other object or follow another object with a lot of complex stuff. But the pre-button will show you some presets like homing missiles and stuff like that. So, target group ID is the object you wanted to move. I don't understand why is it still at 1. Oh, because it's already out. And follow group ID is the object you want this thing to follow to, or to the player. C is basically the camera. And we got different modes, 1, 2, and 3. So mode 1 is the normal mode. Second one is called acceleration, and third one's called complex. So, as you can see, it just did that immediately. So let's add a delay to it. Very same as how you would do with the follow player Y trigger. As you can see, it copies my movements. And you can add a lot of stuff here. So, a homing ball, for example, looks like this. But you view the editor guide if you wanted to do some more details. Don't really know all the trigger settings, again, just so you know. Alright, now let's do the audio triggers. So, the next trigger is the song trigger. Now this song trigger changes the music. Now I'm gonna change to an NCS music because of I don't want this tutorial to be copyrighted. By all means, NCS means no copyright sounds. And since I have this thing off, see if you left it there, it's gonna be. Where am I supposed to summon? So yeah, this basically changes the actual music. For example. Now you can have multiple songs at once with this channel, but do keep in mind it's going to go only up to 5. 0 to 5. 0 to 4 I meant. Now you can change the volume and the speed, loop, self-explanatory. So if you want to loop this music, you can. And the second page is gonna where you want to start or end your song. So they're actually in milliseconds. So if you want to start like at this position, it's going to start here and you can end it here. Also, this button here is gonna like play this music. So it will give you the milliseconds you want. Fade in and fade out if you want to fade the song like this. See how it fades in, and you can do the same thing with fading out. next one is the edit song trigger. Now, edit song trigger changes the properties of an active song trigger. So you can change the speed, the volume, stopping the entire music. This page, we will go over this page in just a little bit when we cover the SFX trigger after that. So this trigger, basically what it does, it changes the property. So if you want to change the speed, I have to make sure change speed is checked. And same thing with the volume. I have to make sure change volume is checked. If you don't, it will not work. But as you can see, speed is change it up. And duration, as self-explanatory. Now, stop is going to stop the entire music. And you can stop whatever specific music in this channel here. If the song that you want to stop is in channel 2, you have to put a 2 here. So stop loop will only stop the looping. The music will still play, but when it hits the end, it's going to be at the end. Sorry about that. Next is the SFX trigger. This trigger is going to have sound effects. Now you can browse the sound effects with this button here. Now, as of now, I'm going to be doing a coin pickup sound 3. And you can tap it here, and you can play it right here. I'm going to put this here so the song won't hear. Yeah, if you just leave it there, it's going to mute. So you can change the speed and pitch and the volume. And the loop is self-explanatory. Preload, FFT, we're not going to cover that. Reverb is going to have an echo-like voice or sound. And this plus button, you can edit whatever global reverb you want. If you want to have it sound like you're in a bathroom or auditorium or an arena, you can do that. Now, start and fade out is exactly the same as will be covered in the song trigger. So it's exactly the same. Unique ID. So if you want to organize and what else? Like group, whatever, you can use unique IDs and SFX. So SFX group is gonna hold on to like multiple sound effects, while unique ID is going to be only one sound effect. Now, mid interval, it's in seconds. So if you touch this trigger, like with a multi-trigger, it's gonna activate a lot of times. But you can have this as a cooldown. So if you set this to only 1 second, it's gonna wait 1 second before it'll perform it again. Now we're gonna cover this page. Now this page is for proximity-based thing. So if you have this block, if your player goes near the block, it's gonna pop up this sound effect. So if it's kind of like waterfalls and you hear the water sounds, you can do that. So when a block or a player moves closer to the block, the sound effect is gonna increase the volume. And same thing as you get out of it. Now we can link this thing as a group, or the second group. So group ID 1 is going to be the object where you want to take the sound effects to take. And group ID 2 is where you want the object to like control the sound effect. Or you can have it as a player. And volume near, so it only does three things. Now, technically, if you hold the sliders, the whole UI is going to be invisible. I don't know why it works for me, but if I set it to whatever, as you can see, you see the red, green, and blue circles. So red circle is min dist, the green one's dist 2, and dist 3 is the blue one. So if you want to, so it sets which distance you want to activate it. So If the player or the object is over here, then it's going to play volume forward. So it's going to be muted still because it's at 0. This too is over here. It's going to make it more volume. And over here, it's going to make it even more volume. Now, I would say it needs a loop. But let's add a different example. And as you can see, it fades away. So, kind of like the waterfall that you have, you just need to decorate it. This over here, this one is it's for randomizing. So if you set it to like 5, every time you activate it, it's gonna be up pitched by 5 or low pitched by 5. So pitch steps, I have no idea. I don't think I've ever used it. So yeah. Edit SFX trigger. Basically, does this very same thing as the edit song trigger, but it's for sound effects. So this trigger has a very similar UI. So you have the unique ID in SFX group. So you can group it and you can have it like that. So group ID. So if you need to have the sound effects as a group and put it in there. I won't be giving to you an example because I've done the same thing with the edit song trigger. So this is pretty much a very similar thing. Next one that we got is BPM. So it's not really a trigger, it's a tool that you can use. So BPM stands for beats per minute, and it's usually with the music and stuff like that. BPB adds more guidelines inside the BPMs. Disable just removes all of it, and you can do it with different speeds if you like. So I don't really know anything about BPM, so if you guys know BPMs, I think this should be very easy. Alright, now we're going to do effect triggers. So let's start with an area triggers here. So as you can see, we have 5 area triggers. Area move, area rotate, area scale, area fade, and area tint. So area triggers, basically what it does is that depending on where the object is, it's going to affect another object. And if you don't know what I'm saying, I'll give you an example. So area move, okay. I'm gonna add a lot of blocks here. Add this to a group. Here's the look, as you can see, the second page. So target group is going to be over here, and the center group is the object you want to modify this or move this block. But you can enable it as a player or whatever. So these buttons over here are for the camera. So C means center, bottom left, center left, top left, bottom center, top center, bottom right, center right, top right of the camera or the entire screen. So the entire screen is a camera, so that's what it is. So the buttons over here, you can allow which one you want to happen. I'm going to explain to you a thing first. Alright, sorry about that. For some reason my computer kind of wasn't like freezing for a little bit, so sorry about that. Anyways, I'm back. So move this to move angle. So we're going to start with XY mode. So it's going to be like the move trigger. So if the player is like near the we add length to it. I'll explain you what length is later. So as you can see, the objects move to the right. So whatever area it is. So length is like how much. So in the distance from the player and the block. So if I set it to 100, and you see the object, I'm not even close, and the object is still moving. But if I set it to really low, it's going to make it closer. So yeah, offset will most likely have it affect, like, so it's just gonna have a little bit of offset on the X side, and offset Y is on the next page. So without it, move dist is, I guess, move in the distance. So it's gonna move down, and move angles, whatever position. So yeah, easing, of course, we all know that. Ease out is basically easing if you want to play for the objects to on move when a player moves away. So yeah, so these buttons over here, you can change whatever settings. So this over here does the complete opposite. So it moves, but if I'm close to the player, it's going to go back to its original position. So this only affects the X and Y side, while this only does horizontal. This, if you want it to affect only one time. Now these buttons I did show you on for the proximity versions. So this also does very similar. So keep that in mind. So now area rotate does the same thing, but it rotates it. And the scale changes the size, the fade is the opacity, the tint is of course the color. It uses a color channel and make sure the tint is anything greater than 1. So yeah, and as you can see, each of these, they're squares, not circles, so it represents different, it has the same color. So this is the same color as the move trigger. This has the same color as the rotate trigger. And this one has the same as the alpha trigger. Now we have something called edit area triggers. So these edit the attributes of an active advanced follow trigger. Now, so for example, let's use the area scale trigger. So we're going to make this thing scale really low. So as you can see, it changes the size. For some reason, I'm still in the I'm in the block for some reason. Oh gosh. But yeah, if you set it this over here, then as you can see, it does like something like this. And if you set it like that, it won't go away. So yeah. So we're going to give this trigger a group, add an edit area scale trigger, and put this group as well. Now you can change whatever you'd like. So, technically, you can change the length to, and if you want to make this NA, just click the trash button and it will not affect it. So let's say I wanted to scale, make it bigger. So as you can see, this makes it smaller. This one is going to change it and make it bigger. So as you can see, it edits the properties of an active area trigger. Now we have something called effect IDs. So effect ID is a reference that can be used later. So you can set it whatever you'd like at 1. And we can say use EID, use effect ID, and make it 1. So we don't need the group. We can just use effect IDs instead. Next one is area stop. This one just stops an area trigger, and this has an effect ID. So, as it says, it basically stops so it doesn't change the sizes or anything. So, next one that we're going to be covering right now is the animate trigger. So this one animates certain stuff. So, as you can see in the animation tab, we have these monsters. So, as you can see, we have the big beast. So this chops constantly. So if you want this thing to constantly like opening his mouth or closing it, or have only like one bite, or if you want this bat to sleep or open his mouth, or if you want this spike ball to puff up, then you can do that with the animate trigger. So I'm gonna make this thing always opens his mouth. We're gonna add this monster to a group, and we're going to set the group ID and the animation ID. So this over here will give you some animation ID. So attack 1 is 1. We're going to give the animation ID 1. And that monster is now constantly opening. For closing, I'm going to have to say 3, yeah. So now it closes. But it used to be like this in the last update. In 2.2, now we have a lot of animations here that we can use. So we have this animation effect, and it's going to be like this. But if you wanted to trigger this and only have one animation, you can go to Edit Special, click on Animate on Trigger, and give this a group. And leave the animation ID blank to 0. Now, it will, whenever you trigger this, it will animate it. So you can make explosions and stuff like that with this if you like. So yeah. Next one is the gradient trigger. Now, watch what happens when I place this. The whole background turns white. So the gradient trigger makes a gradient effect. So do keep in mind that you have to click on Edit Special instead of Edit Object to go to its settings. Now, Edit Object will basically allow you to change whatever gradients on base and detail. So we'll have purple, pink here, and detail, well, I guess magenta. We'll have this color. Look at this. As you can see, the icon is now this color, and as you can see, it fades to this one instead. You can change whatever blending mode you like to have. This is additive, this is invert, this is multiply, and this is normal. And you can have this over here are like different like layers. So BG means background. So this gradient effect only applies on the background, but you can apply like so if you press G, which is ground, it will apply the background and the ground. Max just does basically everything. Preview opacity basically changes the opacity of the gradient in the editor. And disable basically removes the gradient ID. Disables all of the gradients instead of this specific gradient trigger. Now, UDLR, this stands for up, down, left, and right. So this uses group IDs. So, I'll explain to you this here. Group IDs, up. So it's up here, we got down here, left, and right. One, two, three, four. Now the gradient effect is only applied onto like this square looking thing. And do keep in mind that you cannot have more than like one gradient. So that's why we have IDs. So we can have our own ID to create multiple gradients. Also, if you rotate the gradient trigger, it will also rotate the gradient as well. So, we're gonna swing you vertex mode. So this gives you more freedom with this. So if I take vertex mode, well, dang. We got bottom left, bottom right, top left, and top right, which is supposed to be here. So this gives you more, like, you can create meshes and stuff like that. Like, however you'd like. So that's the gradient trigger. Hold on a second. Okay. Next one we got is a spawn particle trigger. Now this trigger spawns particles, of course. So it activates other particles in whatever position. So, as you can see, we have this thing called the particle editor. So I haven't made this tutorial yet, but I'm not planning to. But there are other YouTube videos that has this, or anything online, like the editor guide. So yeah. So if you want to have like explosions or fireworks with this particle, you can do that. I will make like a radius like particle. So just give me a little bit. So do keep in mind that duration has to be anything other than -1 or 0. So it has this duration like effect here. We're going to set this to a group, and we're going to set the object that you want to spawn the particle. So if you want to activate the particle here, add this block and get to another group. Now, particle group is the group that for your particles. Position group is the group that you want for this, for the position or block that you want to spawn the particle with. Now, as you can see, it spawns like that. So this is good for like explosions or fireworks and stuff like that. So, not gonna lie, it actually looks really good. So yeah. So, why is this thing still there? Alright, now, these checkered like shaders, these triggers are shader effects. Now, these are actually my favorite part. So we're going to go through a bunch of them. So first of all, we're going to explain to you what the shockwave trigger does. And this is what it does. It makes a wavy like effect only on a radial position. And you can change whatever settings you like. So speed basically modifies the speed of this. So if you wanted to make it like this effect to be really slow or pretty fast. Thickness is how big each wave is. So this is like very, very thin. Wave width looks like this. This is strength. So you can modify this however you like. Fade in and fade out. Offset, time offset is the offset here, the maximum size. Now here's the thing. Most shaders are going to have screen off X and screen off Y. So this basically changes the X position or whatever. So you can see this white circle is moving into a different location. And for target, center ID is going to be the group ID for an object. So if you want the shockwave to only have on this object, you can do so. So as you can see. Or on a player, or something like that. Invert is going to have the shader effect inward. I'm going to set all these values to 0. Not 0. So shockwave goes from out to in instead of in to out. So keep in mind that all shaders have this checkbox here. That basically just removes this effect in the editor. But you can remove all of them with this previous shaders and uncheck that. Next one is shock line. This is what it does. So it makes the wavy effect, and their settings are very similar to shockwave, except that it does it in a linear position rather than radial. So we have a bunch of stuff here. So as you can see, this shockwave moves from the left side to the right side. Flip basically does from right to left instead of left to right. Rotate basically does it from down to up, and up to down you have to enable both of them. Dual creates 2 shock lines from the center, and it goes to left or right. So if you want to have this underwater-like effect, shock line is a very good trigger to do so. So yeah, animate is something that you would usually see in. You saw this in Shockwave as well. So we covered edit area trigger. So this does pretty much like the edit area trigger does. It changes the properties of an active shockwave or shock line trigger. Next is the glitch trigger. Now, as the name suggests, it does indeed create a glitch effect. So I'm gonna add like a couple of blocks here. So this is what the settings look like. Now usually we see the relative button. It says it follows the screen movement, but I don't really see any difference anyways. So strength is, of course, the strength of this. If you leave it at 0, nothing is going to happen. If you leave it like very low values, it's going to do some minor changes. So yeah, and speed, basically it's self-explanatory. So if you let it to pretty low, it will make this very, very slow glitch effect. But if you set it like pretty high, it's going to be fast. Yeah, so slice height. So there are three effects in the glitch trigger. We have the X and Y side of the colors, the blue one and the yellow, as you can see, and we got slice. So we got, as you can see, how this, you can see my cursor, how it's a little bit like off, like a cut, that's what it is. And slice height is that you can set whatever height you want. Max less X off is the changes. If you want to have it, if you leave it off, you don't want it to get sliced. And max colex off is the offset for the colors, and same with the Y position. Next is chromatic. Now it doesn't do anything, but chromatic splits the RGB. So as you can see, you got target X and target Y. Now, one of these checkboxes have to be enabled. So if I want to change this, I have to enable this. Also, this is what it does. So it splits the colors, like so, even though it doesn't work right. Let's do 10. So as you can see, it splits the red, green, and blue colors. And I guess that's that's it with this trigger. And the target Y does the same thing on a Y position as well. Chromatic glitch. This is what it looks like. So it makes the X head chromatic and a little bit of wavy look into it. And here's what the settings look like. So let's start with the checkboxes here. So disable basically disables this effect. Relative position is going to move the wavy Y position of the wavy effect with it. See how the block didn't really change the wavy effect? So this one, it follows the Y position of the camera, but this removes it. So speed, so it looks like this. So it has the wavy effect as you can see here. So speed modifies that. RGB off is for the colors, for the chromatic of course. The strength is like this, making it more intense. Segment height, or segment H, makes these lines, as you can see, is like more thicker. Line thickness is making it the line, I guess, thicker, I'm assuming. And line strength is the opacity of the lines. The next one is pixelating. And of course, this does have something to do with pixels. And the settings are very similar to chromatic, but it does this instead. And it's a little bit blurry, but we have hard edges. So hard edges making it more sharp. And snap grid locks it to the camera. Well, as you can see. Lens circle creates this black circle around. So strength is the opacity. Fade is like this, of course. And center ID and stuff like that. Now tint channel uses a color channel. So it uses color 2. If I put 2 here, it's going to match that color. So next one we got is 2 types of blurs. Next one we have is motion blur. Now, very similar to chromatic, but it has a lot more stuff, and I'm not going to tell you everything here. So technically this is what it does. So it blurs on the X side or the Y side. So notice how this motion blur only blurs like to the left. So dual blur basically blurs to the left and the right. So yeah. So fade is like this. And intensity doesn't work, but it's supposed to change the opacity of the blur. And yeah. Next one is radial blur. So this one blurs like around. So size is what the intensity is. So very similar to the last one. Again, the screen of X and Y and stuff like that. So yeah. The bulge trigger does this. So it makes the fisheye-like effect. So in here, bulge is the target, and radius basically makes it like this. So it's kind of like a fisheye effect. And I screen off X and Y, so they're the same thing, and target as well. If you like to mess around them, you can go ahead and do that. So the pinch trigger basically pulls inwards, which is the opposite of bulge, except it uses these instead. But you both use X and Y and adjust the radius. That's exactly what this does. So you can change the radius and their modifier. And if you have one of them enabled, this is what it looks like. So as you can see, it pulls inwards rather than outwards. So there are also other triggers that are filters instead. But before I'm going to talk about the filters, I'm going to cover the split screen trigger. So this trigger splits the screen into different sections. So if I have this at 1, it shows 2 screens, but they're stretched. But if I put both of them 1, and now we get to see 4. As you can see here. Also, without only the Y position looks like this. And I'm going to cover the shader trigger really quickly. So this shader trigger basically limits the amount of shader effect. So if you want this shader effect to only affect on a background, you have to make sure this effect is on a background or on a player or so on. So make sure you double click, because if you just click, this will happen. So you have to double click instead. And very similar to gradient trigger. So yeah, disables all the shaders and no player particles. So if the shaders only affected the player, the particles of the player will I don't have particles there. But if you move left and right, you can see the particles like over here on the cursor, mouse cursor. It will affect it. So this will disable it. So grayscale trigger makes everything black and white. So target does this, and use lum is a different grayscale conversion. So it uses a different conversion to grayscale. And tint channel, instead of making it black and white, you can tint it as well. So you can make it tinted, but may have to make sure this checkbox here is enabled. It's gonna keep doing this, but leave it 0 and have this checkbox. So next one is sepia, which does this. So it makes a golden-like effect, and there's not really much settings there. So yeah. Next one is invert color trigger. So this one is pretty distorted, but it changes the inverts the colors. So this one has some more stuff to it. So RGB values, it won't work unless you hit edit RGB. So it modifies whatever colors. I mean, be careful, because if you set all these to 0, it's going to go back to its original state. So keep in mind. So tween and clamp RGB, well, I'm not going to explain that. So the hue trigger changes the hue shift of the color. So it has degrees here that can change to a bunch of colors. And edit color trigger is brightest contrast. So CR, CG, and CB means color red, color G, color green, color blue. So it does have it's called contrast, and BR means brightness red, brightness green, and blue. So it has that like effect that you can make it pretty distorted like this if that's what you like. But yeah, so yeah, that's all the shaders. Next one that I'm going to be covering is the UI trigger. So the UI trigger can make custom UI systems, so it's very good for platformer mode. So now we're going to use a target for all the stuff. So the guide trigger is a good explanation, and I'll teach you how to use the guide trigger later. But we're going to use this. So it has the camera borders up here. We're going to set this to a group. So this will be the reference here. So if you want to have like the amount of collectibles here or so on, you can totally do that. So let's say I'm going to have this object. So this object is always going to stay no matter what. So we're going to have this to another group. So in here, we're going to select the group ID, which is for this block here, or whatever object that you want to have in the UI, and a UI target with a guide trigger. Now, okay, something seems to not be working. Is it in? Sorry guys, I'm having technical difficulties here. So XREF and YF are references. Does it have to be in the thing? Hold on a second. Okay, sorry about that. But yeah, you can see the block. I added these blocks over here. So as you can see, the block here will always stay no matter what. So this is good for like counting pickups or whatever. and it has their own layer too. So that's why you see the UI in the shader trigger or the gradient trigger. So next one is the link visible trigger, which is this one right here. So this one only has a group ID, but what this trigger does is that, so if you happen to have this block and you scale up really high, or scale left and right, as you can see, this block will not render. It just disappears whenever I move it away, and it will affect like this in the game. So if you want it to always render, this trigger does its job. But you need to make sure you need to add another block here to this side, add both of them to a group, and add this to a group, and it shouldn't, yeah, so it shouldn't move like that. It shouldn't disappear, because without it, it'll be like this. Okay, next one are going to be easy ones. So now we're going to do triggers that's going to manipulate the background. So these arrows here are called B, G, G, and MG. So this stands for background, this stands for ground, which is this here, this stands for middle ground. So we can have multiple backgrounds. As you can see, this one here and the ground is like this one. Middle ground are like mountains. Like, you can see this mountain here. You can do that as well. So this trigger basically allows you to change whatever background you like. Mid-level. And actually, before, this was a 2.2 feature. So whenever, before 2.2, I was like, in 2018, I was in fifth grade, yes, and I really want this feature. As you can see, the background changes, the ground changes, and the middle ground is now changed. You can like enable, disable the middle ground, or something like that. This middle ground, another one, is to change the Y position. So let me enable this. So this one over here changes the Y position. So if you see the middle ground here in the background, you can see it changes up. So what it does is that it changes the Y of the middle ground. So if you have like a level that's like up high, if you want this to be shown, you can do that. Background speed and middle ground speed changes the scrolling speed of the background. So whenever you move left, you can see the background moves pretty slow. So by default, it's going to move at the same speed as the player or the ground, like it's an object. Now, you can set the X speed, like this moves halfway, but it still moves pretty fast. If you set it to 0, then it's not going to move at all. So it's basically like it's good for like caves and stuff. Now middle ground speed does the same thing, but for middle ground, it will tell you what the default will be for both. So yeah. So I didn't show you what these triggers look like. Anyways. So now we're going to do enter triggers. So these stuff right here are what they're called transitions. So it doesn't really work in playtest, so I have to do it in the editor. So if I have this over here, as you can see, the transition from when the block enters the screen or exits the screen, you can see it has like a different moving effect. Now this has been added since the very first update. Sorry about that. Like this over here. As you can see, it has that position. So look at this. Oh, see this here and see this here. That's basically what it does. So enter and exit only will, enter only will only affect on the right side, and exit only will only affect it on the left side. Now, it will affect on all the blocks by default. So target enter channel will be, if you want to access, have the enter trigger to affect a specific object. So if you want to have the effect to only affect these blocks, go to edit group, go to extra 2, and go to set the whatever enter channel you like into here. And as you can see, it only affects only this. And now we have these triggers here. So these triggers will allow you to make your own. So the effect here is very, very similar to area triggers. So if you know area triggers, then you might as well know enter triggers. So these are really, really self-explanatory, and not gonna lie, they're actually easier than area triggers. An enter stop basically stops an area trigger. And yeah, so we finally finished with the effect triggers. Now we're gonna do gameplay triggers. So gameplay triggers, okay. So now let's talk about the end trigger. So this end trigger makes the ending of a level. So if you're in classic mode, you can have this, but in platformer mode, you need to have this. Because in platform mode, it basically just moves it like this and this infinitely. So it goes infinitely. So you need to end the level, you need to have this. This is what the setup looks like. And as you can see, if I touch this trigger, it ends the level. But there are different stuff that you can do. So instant, so the player will not gradually pull you to the effect. It just immediately does it. No effects basically removes this any visual effects. So it just leaves it out like that. No S effects removes any sound effects, and if you enable all of them, it completes it immediately. Now, target position uses a group ID. If you want the player to gradually pull to this object, that's what target position does. So next we're going to talk about is the reverse trigger. Now this one only works in classic levels. So the reverse trigger, what it does, it makes the player go on the opposite side. That's it. That's it. And now we're going to do arrow triggers. So arrow triggers are more powerful than the reverse triggers. Now this trigger will allow you to go sideways in the level. And we're going to explain to you what it does. So to use triggers to go sideways, we use something called channels. But I don't know if I should talk about the channels, but I might. So this arrow trigger here's the settings. It won't do anything, but if you rotate it, it will change that position. So this line over here is to know which ground is to set. So as you can see, like that. And yeah, so edit velocity will change whatever velocity. So it will, whenever you hit this trigger, it's gonna make like a little jump or something like that. So you can edit whatever velocity you'd like. So it has that mini jump, as you can see here. And you can do the same thing with the X side, I think. Yeah. So now for the channels. So triggers that will be activated uses different channels, of course. So if I want to activate different music, I go to edit group, and you see the CH over here? Choose whatever channel, like 1. And you go to change channel, and you set this channel to 1. So whenever this song will only activate when the player moves like here. It only works in classic levels. So yeah. There's an option called channel only. So what this does is that it will not switch to gameplay rotation, but it will switch to channel instead. So yeah, that's the area trigger. Now these video camera like triggers are the camera triggers. So these, of course, manipulate the camera trigger, the camera. So let's start off with the zoom trigger. So this one zooms in and out the level, as you can see here. The static trigger freezes the camera in place. So if I use this block and set this to a group, it will lock it to the center of the screen. Target group here. So as you can see, it locks to that. And so you can have X only or Y only. And X is static. So if you want to change the camera to its original position, use exit static, and yeah, this will go back to its original position. So let's say this object moves. It will not follow. So if you tick follow here, then it's going to follow like that. So the offset trigger offsets, basically moves the camera around. So if you know how to use the move trigger, this should be really easy. So basically it's like a move trigger but for cameras instead. So see how it moves a little bit to the left, although player's still following me. So yeah. So the GP off, which is short for gameplay offset trigger. So what this trigger does, before I explain to you what it is, if you move left and right in platformer mode, you can see how the camera automatically offsets. So this trigger modifies it. So if I set it to 0, 0, it will look like this. So if I set the offset Y is basically for the arrow trigger sideways gameplay. So if I set it to like 50, see how it moves a little bit further, and if I move the other side, it does the same thing, all the way to 100. See, I'm way further to the left. If I go this side, I'm moving way further to the right. The default button is 25-25, so this makes it basically like this movement. Rotate, so this one rotates the camera, not to be confused with this rotate trigger. This one rotates objects, this one rotates the camera. So, as self-explanatory, it rotates the camera. So, Yeah, and there's two checkboxes here. So add basically adds the amount of rotation, like that. Because if you just don't, it's gonna go into that rotation. Snap 360. So if I'm on a negative side, if I want to rotate the other side, it's going to do that. Snap 360 is the same thing. Alright, so if I made like a 360, make a full rotation, and make it like that. So I go all the way around, it's going to switch it back. So Snap 360, what it does, it converts the rotation, it converts to the closest 360. Alright, the next trigger is the edge trigger. This one. So the edge trigger is going to lock to whatever block it is. I'll explain this to you. So we have a group here. Now as you can see, I can go everywhere, okay? So the edge trigger, I'll set the target ID. So on lock is going to make it 0. And I'm going to lock it to the right. Now watch this. As you can see, the camera can't move anywhere, because it's already locked to this side. Next trigger is the mode trigger. So this trigger is basically for other game modes except for the cube or the robot. So I'm going to be using a jetpack, for example. So as you can see here, so we have two grounds. The first one we can't see, you usually can't see it, and the second one on the top. So this basically enables what they're called the free flat mode. So you tickle free mode, and it's going to, so as you can see, you're very limited. But this over here removes the other border, and you can finally freely fly around. And edit camera settings, so you can edit whatever camera things you want. So let's say padding, if it's at 0, it just flies even like off the screen. If I set it to 1, as you can see, it looks like the camera's like following the player. So it kind of has like an offset, and easing, what it does is that when you fly up or down, it has that, it moves slower the higher the easing is. If you set it to like 1, then it's like this, apparently. Now we get to talk about what the guide trigger does. So like I said, it shows the camera border. So that's exactly what it does. So it's another tool, not like a trigger. It basically previews the borders of the camera. Now preview opacity is the same thing as a gradient trigger, but for the borders of the camera. Now let's talk about the gravity trigger. So this one changes the gravity of the player. So the player can jump higher. Like if you want the level to be like that you're on the moon, you can do this. So the lower gravity. As you can see, now I jump higher. If I'm on second, that's the fastest you can go. And at 0.1, this is the highest you can go. Although do keep in mind that it is possible to set this as -1. This is what happens. Yeah, pretty weird. So the 3 checkboxes here. So player 1 and player 2. So player 1 is the gravity is going to affect only on this player, because by default it's going to affect both players. PT means player touch. So if it's on touch trigger, if the one of the players touches the trigger, that player is going to affect it. Next one that we have is the teleport trigger. So this one teleports one player to the other. I have to use like a non-interactable object, like this hexagon here, and set this to a group. Here's a layout UI. So it will teleport me to this group right here. And I'm going to, so this actually uses portals for teleporting. And I'm going to explain to you some teleport settings. Okay. So let's talk about the gravity to the left. So this one is that if it teleports, it can flip the gravity. So gravity is like, it's going to invert the gravity. And normal is going to go back to normal gravity. And toggle is going to go up or down depending on what gravity are you. So next we got some force. So static force will do this. It has a little bit of force to it. The higher it is, the more force it'll give me. See, the teleport just pushes me because without it, I just stay there. So next one that we got is smooth ease. This one basically moves the camera slower. I don't know what it does. Save offset. So as you can see, whenever I teleport from the bottom, it basically brings me to the middle. So save offset basically prevents that. So I'm on the bottom. It teleports me right on the bottom. Ignore X and ignore Y is self-explanatory, so it will not do anything on the X position. And the Y position. So it will not teleport anything, the Y position. Instant camera is going to change the camera instantly. Like immediately, because by default the camera's going to be like going to go to this, but it's going to move it immediately instead. Redirect dash. Okay, I had this teleport portal is going to move up, and I use one of those dash orbs. So it's going to move this side, and I'm still going to move to the same direction. With redirect dash, what I can do is that I can dash to here, and I can dash upwards. So depending on where this teleport is facing. So yeah, all this is into a trigger. Next one is a very easy one, the time warp trigger. This one changes the speed of the game. So if I have it like at 0.35 speed, as you can see, it makes this slow motion effect. And of course, up to the highest one, it's gonna make fast motion. So next one that I have is the options trigger. So this trigger changes various options and stuff like that. So yeah, pretty fun to tell you this. Streak additive basically changes the blending of a trail for the jetpack game mode. Hide ground basically hides the ground, but I mean it's not going to hide the entire ground. I mean you will still stand on the invisible ground. Hide middle ground is self-explanatory, hiding the players, disabling the controls. So when you disable the controls, it will not do anything. So, for example, I'll be, as you can see, I will not have access until I turn it off. This is very good for like auto levels or like transitions or whatever. And next page you get some more options like unlink dual gravity. So if you're on dual and when you switch gravity, when that one player goes to the gravity portal, the other player will also switch the opposite gravity. So to prevent this will unlink dual gravity is it. Hide attempts will hide the attempts counter. So whenever you play whatever level, it's going to say attempt 0, so it'll show your attempts, so this you can hide that. Audio on death, so when you die, the music just stops, so this prevents that. No death sound effects is self-explanatory. This will remove any death sound effects. Edit respawn time will, so when you die, it will wait for a little bit and then it will respawn. So you can edit whatever the amount of seconds you want. Like if you want to have a screen that's going to say you die or whatever, you can do that. And there's a respawn time slider at the bottom here to show which one do you want. So boost slide, whenever a force is applied, it increases the sliding. So yeah. Next one is player control trigger. This trigger basically stops whatever it does and then it performs it again. So let's say stop moving. If I continue to move and hit this trigger, wait, okay, there we go. It's gonna stop. But if I press the button again, I'm gonna still keep going. So if I did double click, it's gonna continue. So whenever there's like something else appear, I'm gonna keep going. It's like, oh, that's nice. I'll keep going, something like that. And you can do the same thing for jumping, rotating. Sliding is for force blocks, and you can do it on whatever player is assigned. Leaving it blank is gonna affect both players. Okay, next one we're gonna do is condition triggers. So let me explain you what the spawn trigger is. So whenever this trigger activates something, it's what it's called spawning. So this spawn trigger activates other triggers. So it's a very cool organized thing to do. So for example, if I have this block here, and I guess let's say I want to scale twice, right? So I can spawn it on this. So this is what spawn trigger does. So at the spawn trigger and multi-triggers for multiple times. And whenever whenever you have to hit a spawn trigger, you need to add this as a group. Add the group to the spawn trigger, and it does exact same thing. And you can add delay as well. Plus and minus options are basically randomized variants. I don't know really how that works. Spawn ordered is for, so whenever you are like, as you can see, if I set it to like this, it will not work because it's going to spawn this and this and this simultaneously together. So yeah, if you want to spawn like from left to right, tick spawn ordered. So it's going to go big, small, and big. So this is very useful for platformer mode. So if you like, let's say you hit a button and it's gonna activate like a bunch of things. So it goes in order. That's exactly what it does. The second page is what is called spawn remapping. So this makes like saves a bunch of group IDs. I will not explain to you this. I do have another YouTube video. I did explain to you how to do this. So yeah. Next one that we got is the on death trigger. So there are also other triggers that also activates like the spawn trigger. But it does additional things like the on death trigger. This is very similar to the spawn trigger, toggle trigger. So it also can be used as a spawn trigger, but you need to tick activate group. So on death trigger activates when a player dies. So if I say pulsing the background to red, spawn trigger, group, add the group here, activate group. So if I happen to die, right, it will activate. Like that. Let's try it again. One more time. So yeah, that's pretty much what this trigger does. And again, you can use no death SFX and the respawn time in the options trigger. So you can create your own death screen and stuff like that. So next one that we got is the touch trigger. So touch trigger activates whenever a player ignore the play. This is not the trigger playback. This is for my mods or whatever. I mean, it doesn't really do anything. So yeah, the touch trigger activates whenever a player clicks, if you're on PC, or taps the screen if you're on mobile. So if you're on group ID with 1, it's going to use toggle triggers. But first, you can also spawn it. To spawn it, you need to do enable toggle on. So I guess I gotta add this back, the pulsing back red background. So make sure it's toggle on. So if you move left and right, it does the same thing. So yeah, so hold mode, what it does is that it's not really gonna do it, but so by default it's gonna be clicking. But hold mode, what it does, it hold and release. And dual mode is for duals. Now we're going to talk about the collision trigger. Yeah, so every time for activation, this will pulse. Okay. So the collision trigger. So I'll explain this. So you have this block here. They're like hitboxes. If these two collisions touch each other, then it activates. So we need to give ourselves a unique any block ID, but they both have to be different, and one of them has to enable dynamic block. So what it does is that dynamic block has to move. Okay. I'm gonna give this a group, so I'm gonna move this. So it's on a third group. Give this a 3. I'm gonna move it whatever I like. So somewhere that's going to, there we go. So collision trigger, get the ID here, activate group, and target ID is going to be the group ID. So as you can see, it spawns when it touches each other. So P1 or player, so you can use your player as a hitbox. So next one we got is instant collision trigger. So I don't normally use this trigger a lot, but what this does is it's very similar to the collision trigger, except that if the collision trigger works, but it detects it if two blocks touch each other or does not. True ID is the same as the target ID for the normal collision trigger, but the false ID is actually if the collision block touches a different collision trigger. So yeah, I'm not really too familiar with the instant collision trigger. So yeah, but I'm gonna give you an example. So 1, 2, 3. I'm just gonna give you these 2. So instant collision trigger. So it's gonna be okay. We're gonna toggle this green. So if it's green, that means it's good. But if it's red, it's not. And make sure you guys give each 2 different groups. So the green will be in true ID, the red will be in false ID. So block A, so it's always going to be the player and 2. So if I touch this, you do realize, okay, so it needs to be activated first. Because it's red. So it's red by default. So if it's, I'm going to have to say 1 and 2. Okay. Yeah, I'm not really too familiar what this trigger actually does. So, oh, I didn't have this enabled. Whoops. Yeah, so it's green. But if it doesn't, then it's red. So the next one that we got is this event trigger, which is called event link. This one activates whatever a player's action is. So like the jumping sound and the floor hit, definitely. So I'm going to use the jumping sound. So I can use this sound effects here. Spawn it, multi-trigger. Because if you don't use multi-trigger, it will work on one jump, but when you jump the other time, it will not work. So we will use the group ID here. Oh, and this corner here, this button here, we have a lot of things to choose from. So event 12 is normal jump, so we're going to click that. And you can have multiple at once. So now it makes a sound when you jump. Extra ID. So for this one, we're going to be doing something what I like to be called, and you don't have to use sound effects, you can use other triggers. So I'm gonna have this AI to call it like
1
and call it
2.
So extra ID, I'm gonna do the floor landing, normal landing.
1 1 1 1 1.
So if I want to link to whatever stuff, so extra ID will play different sound effects on the same event. So add a group extra 2 and enter the material onto the right side. Another material here. So extra ID should match the material. So again, group ID 2, extra ID 2 here.
1 1 1 2 2 2.
So it does the same
1
event but different spawnings. So next one we got is the sequence trigger. So this one activates a bunch of other triggers in a sequence. So it's basically like in order. So for example, what I'm gonna do is take this block. We're going to move up, then right, then down, and then back to the left. Second group, third group, fourth, fifth. And in here, you click this plus button to add. And pressing this and the minus button will delete it, and the arrows here will move, whatever. So it's going to activate. So whenever I touch this trigger multiple times, if I have multi-trigger, it's actually on by default. It's going to activate this, then after that's going to activate this, then this, and then this. So, okay. Alright. What's happening? Oh wait, it's supposed to be at 5. Nope. Oops. There you go. So it goes up, then it goes this side, it triggers another one, and it triggers another one. So this is a really good trigger for like dialogues. So yeah. And we have 3 different modes here. So mode stop, what it does is that it basically just stops after this one and that's it. Mode loop, what it does is that after you reach the end, if you do it again, it's going to go all the way back to the start. So it's going to continue looping. Mode last, what it does is that it's always, after you finish the whole sequence, it's always going to be triggering the last sequence here. So count is like you've activated a bunch of times. So it's usually on 1. So usually, okay. So I have count 2 here on the second sequence. So when I activate it, it's going to go here, then it's going to go here, and then it's going to go here again. So it's going to activate this thing twice till it before it moves to the next sequence. As you can see. And mint interval, so if you know this, let's go to the SFX trigger. If you know this, it's basically the same thing in the sequence trigger. And that's the sequence trigger. Next one is the random trigger. Now, as its name suggests, it activates one of 2 groups randomly. So I link the triggers and I put them in group ID 1 and 2. And this will trigger only activate 2 groups. And we got chance. So there's a 50-50 chance if it's on 50% chance. If I put it on 75% chance, then there's a 75% chance that this group will be activated, and there is a 25% chance that this group will be activated. So if I have a pulse trigger on red and the green, set these up, it will pulse red, green, 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 green. Yeah, so it does it randomly. So yeah, the higher chances here, there's gonna be more chances that this will group, and anything here, this will group more. Next one is add rand trigger. This is the advanced random trigger. Now this one over here, now like I said, the original random trigger only activates only 2 groups. This can activate more than 2 groups. So for example, let's add another to it. I'm gonna make it pulsing blue instead, dark blue. So if you know how edit group the edit group section is very similar, and you can edit the amount of chance you like to have. So it will pulse on green, red, blue, 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 and so on. The next trigger is the stop trigger. Now this one basically stops the whole triggers. So for this, I'm going to be using a trigger to fully just zoom out very, very low. Like that. I don't have to take spawn trigger or anything. All I got to do is activate this as a group and put it here. So while it's moving left, I can just stop it like that. And we got pause and resume. So it does change the textures actually. So what pause trigger does is that it puts the group on hold. It does the same thing as a stop trigger, but you can resume it with the resume option. So as you can see, it pauses and it starts again. The use control ID is basically this. If you don't want to use edit triggers, then you can use control IDs, whatever ID you want to this trigger, and you can take the use control ID. Okay, so there is 2 more triggers related to the advanced follow trigger. Also, rotate dir also rotates the object. So this is a spike ball, and as you can see, it won't kill me. It will, but for the sake of this video, it won't kill me. So we have this trigger called edit advanced follow trigger. Now this one edits the properties of an active advanced follow trigger, just like the edit area triggers. So yeah, the target group ID has to be the same as your target group ID for the advanced follow trigger. And since I don't really know anything here, but the speed happens to make this thing go up a little bit. So I'm gonna make sure this is active multiple times. So as you can see, it makes this bounce-like effect. And another thing is the retarget advanced follow trigger. This one changes the target. So you know how this object follows me? Well, this trigger basically changes how this follows to. So if I want to change this to follow this block, I have to give this another group and give this one a group. So target group ID is going to be the triggers group, and the follow is going to be the new follow. So it's following. Okay. See, it's following me. Oh, now it follows here in this instead. So I like this advanced follow trigger. If you've played Celeste before, you have this key. So if you have this key with you, it will follow you with this trigger. And you know, when you're closer to the door, this door it now follows the keyhole, and you can use this trigger. So you can use this warp tool, make it like that. Alright, now we're going to do item triggers. So now we're going to use something called item IDs. Now this is very good for platformer mode. So these are for like counters. So the 0 here is what I call a counter display. Now I'll go over this stuff in a little bit, but you can enter whatever item ID you want. You can start off with 1, and we have a pickup trigger. So this changes the values of this pickup trigger. So have your item ID and count will be 1, so it will add 1. So as you can see, it changes. So the item ID has to match, and the plus button moves to the next new item ID, just like next free. So yeah. So override basically just sets the number, so it basically sets it to 4, because without it, what it does is that it keeps adding on. And there's also multiply. You can multiply and divide as well. So count basically adds 4, adds 6, and so on. So next one we got is the count trigger. So the count trigger activates if the item ID hits target count. So if you're into programming, this is kind of like an if statement. So, but it's like greater than equal. So if item ID is greater than or equals to target count, then target ID. So if you like wanted to unlock a coin or something like that, then you can do that. And we have these collectibles that you can use. So for this, you go to Edit Special, go to Pick Up Item, you go to Item ID. So whenever you hit this object, it will upgrade, and you can subtract it if you want. So let's say I have 3 of them, and I want to activate again another pulsing background. It's going to be a group 2. We're going to put target ID here, and make sure the activate group is enabled. So multi-activate if you want the count trigger to activate multiple times. So your item ID will be 1 over here, and target count. So if you want So let's say it will activate if you collect all 3. You put target count to 3. If you want to do 1, then do 1. So it's going to do this. Like that. Next one that we got is an instant count. So for this one, you have to, it won't activate immediately. You have to collect it, and you have to spawn it. So this one does very similar, but this time it's either equals, greater than, or larger, or less than, or smaller. So let me fill those out in. So I'm going to do 2 instead, and they're going to be equals. So if it's 2, then they should equal, because other than that, it will not work. Not even if you collect all of them, because they're in an equals position. If I put larger, anything bigger than 2 will activate. But if it's smaller, anything less than or smaller than 2 will get activated. Alright, next one, I'm going to cover these 3 item triggers. Now, I made a YouTube video about this, but this is a more updated detail. So let's start with an item edit trigger. Now, this is another complex trigger, but don't worry. Think of this as like an advanced pickup trigger. Okay, a lot of people like to say this is the calculator trigger or the math trigger, because what this does, it uses 2 item IDs and makes equations and stores the result. I'm going to make a adding count to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 3 item IDs. And this will have our own count. So if you do keep in mind, if you have the same item ID here, then the left side is always going to be counted up. So do keep in mind. And so we're going to use these 2 right here. Item. You can use timers, attempts. You can use attempts and points or whatever. So I'm not going to cover that. We will cover timers after the item triggers. That includes these clocks. And target item ID. So what this does is that I'm going to do this real quickly. So, okay, do it randomly. So 4 plus 2 is 6, right? Well, there you go. Now we got 6 because item ID 3 equals item ID 1 plus item equals 2. So with this one, the middle button here, this second one, you can make it like subtraction, multiplication, division. This dot here is multiplication, and slash is division. Equals, well, we got something like item equals 3 plus 1 plus 2. This one over here only does, so mod is you can add whatever modifier. This could be cool, because this is kind of like, how should I put this, like the area of a triangle. So you can make area of a triangle using this. If it's divided by 2. So this is the area of a triangle. Base times height divided by 2. And you can use the timer or points or whatever. The anime buttons here are for roundings, floors, and ceilings. So round is rounding to the nearest. I mean, you should have learned that in elementary school. FL means floor. So yeah, alright. That means it will round it down, and SE ceiling is going to round up. These 2 blank ones are here for absolute values. So absolute values are going to make everything positive, and N means negative values are going to make everything negative. Negative integer. So you can make a bunch of equations using those. So next one is item compare. So this one, what it does, it's basically an if trigger. It compares two item IDs. It's very similar like the item usually on the top here, and you can literally make attempts with it. So if you played the second tower level, the sewers, when you can see that on a first attempt, attempt 1, you can see that monster popping up, and it actually uses keyframes, saying "haha, matey." But when you restart on attempt 2, it will not do it. Well, that's with this trigger. Technically, you can use attempts or items, but you have to hit item for that. So yeah, so it can say, like, if the attempts is equals to 1, and it's equals, and there are both modifiers. So if this condition is met, then this will pop up, true ID. Otherwise, false ID. These two are group IDs, and you can cycle whatever if you want. So this is equals if the attempts is greater than, if the attempts is greater than or equal to. This is if the attempt is not equals to. So I'm going to make this pulsing background will only affect if the attempt is 1. Attempt. This is into a group of 2. We're going to put it in true ID. Or you can make this less than equals to if you'd like. So we're already on the first attempt. Okay. I think this needs to be touch triggered as well. Also, you can make your counter display, click attempts, it'll display as attempts. So attempt 1 is gonna pulse it, but it's not gonna do it because we're not in the attempts counter. But you can do other like item IDs and timers. So if the timer is less than 1, then you can do that. So if timer is less than 1, that's kind of like for countdowns. Oh, time's up and stuff like that. So next one that we got is item persistence. So this one makes the item ID persistent. So if you don't know what I mean, I'm going to explain this to you. So by default, if I die, then the counter resets. But if you want it to still remain after you die, then you head to IRMT and click on persistent. So okay, so yeah, timer. If you're gonna do this with timers, you need to click on timer, and reset basically resets the value to 0. So if you have it on persistence, then it will remain. Anyways, now we're going to talk about timers. So, but before I talk about timers, there are also some other features of triggers I haven't talked to you about because we haven't even talked about spawn triggers. So I'm going to show some features that I did show you before we learned about spawning. So for the keyframe system, spawn group ID will activate a group whenever an object hits the keyframe, and spawn delay has a delay to it, and proximity is when it activates when it gets close to the keyframe rather than when it hits the keyframe. And the end trigger, the spawn ID, it's going to activate when it ends. So yeah, so let's now start beginning with timers. So we need to make sure the time counter is selected. So now it's T instead. So you can make it left or right align, or it's going to display in seconds, in milliseconds. So if I just take item ID, now it starts the timer. But if you wanted to only display seconds, then you can totally do that. So let's see what we got. So start time, it basically starts whatever time you'd like. So if you wanted to start at 25 seconds, you can do that. And you can stop at whatever time, but keep to make sure that you do need to have this checkbox enabled. So now it stops. Target ID. So target ID is going to activate when a stop time hits. And time mod basically modifies the time. So if I have it on very low, as you can see, it's very low. If I do it 2, it's going to make it twice as fast. As you can see, it activated the target ID. And you can make this negative. That's for when that's how you make countdown timers. So start paused basically will not do anything. It will just start at 25. Don't override. So if you want to modify the time mod, it will change the start and time value. So this will prevent that. Ignore time warp. So when you have a time warp activated, the timer will slow down. So if you don't want that, you can do that. Let's just keep it there. So time event trigger activates when a certain timer is hit. I'm going to explain to you this. So I have this displays that too, right? We're going to put the target ID here. You can activate this multiple times if you want. Item ID here. And target time, it depends if you want what you want it to hit. So if you want it to be 2 seconds, we're going to wait until 2 seconds, and then it's going to activate. So again, this is good for like speed running. So if you didn't make it in time, you won't get a coin or whatever. And if you, this is kind of like the count trigger, but for timers. And finally, we have the control trigger. So this is the only thing we have. What it does, it just stops or starts the timer. That's it. Like that. Any triggers do I have left? Well, we are down to one final trigger, the reset trigger, and this is actually pretty easy. What this does is that it resets collectibles and checkpoints. So I have some collectibles here, and it also does checkpoints here, as well as some breakable blocks. So it resets certain objects. Just give this thing a group. I don't know what I'm doing here. I can do it in playtest. And I can recollect it. So, now that's it. We have done every single triggers. I've been waiting for this for a very, very long time, and I finally got to do it. And I really hope you are learning this from me. I know I really didn't do good, but that's the best thing I can do. Anyways, I will see you soon.